Come along, this is the Transfer Show. Myself and Mark McAdam will have the very latest on all the big deals. And what could that mean for Alexander Isak? The very latest on his future, including Eddie Howe's thoughts. Does it feel inevitable that Alexander Isak won't be a Newcastle United player come the end of this window?
We're going to look at the situation and say, who's desperate for him? You know, people are talking about him going to Liverpool, and then Liverpool made a big sign-in. So this all goes back to a player's contract and how a player's contract is structured. So agents have got to structure players' contracts so that they don't find themselves in a position where they can't move if they want to move, or they can't have a say in their own life, in their own career. I mean, the player's still got 3 years left. He hasn't got a buyout clause. I mean, for me, you know, if strikers are so highly sought after that you've got to structure players' contracts so that they've got 2 years left or they've got 1 year left and then they can have a say. But 3 years left, it's not easy for him to leave. And why should Newcastle put themselves in a situation where they don't have a top-line striker in their squad? And people are talking about other players coming in, but what clubs normally do is they'll bring a player in so that it looks like they've overloaded with players, but then they're already behind the scenes doing a deal for a player to go out. I just can't see that deal happening easily.
No.
Yeah, and the player's got 3 years left. Maybe if it was 2 years, he could say, I'm not signing a new contract. But for Newcastle, remember, it's a massive club with big support. I don't see who's desperate for him, and I don't see why Newcastle should be desperate to sell him.
Scott, his head has clearly been turned, though, with Liverpool's interest. Just put yourself in the position of Alexander Isak's agent. Just give us an insight into it. What would your advice be to him at this stage?
First and foremost, the reason why agents get players to sign long-term deals is because commission. Obviously, if a player signs a 5-year deal, you get 5 or 10% of that 5-year deal. Now, this situation is very difficult because in the first instance, whenever I'm representing a player, you have to have foresight. You've got hindsight, foresight. And the foresight is what happens in a year, 2 years? What happens if you blow up? You've got to have those conversations at the stage of the marriage. You've got to negotiate the divorce when you're negotiating the marriage. So when we get to a situation after a year, 2 years, and the player does blow up, then the player has a say. You've got to speculate. I mean, too many deals are being done where players are just signing contracts, long-term contracts. There's no structure in the contract, there's no buyout clause, and there's no divorce clause. So then what happens is the player starts to get frustrated, and that's why sometimes players look bad. It's because they realise, I've got to make this move now, because football's all about timing. You're not always sought after. Demand and supply. I mean, there's a massive demand for someone like Isak, the type of player is. But at this moment in time, how many clubs have got 100, 120, 130, 150 million? People are talking about Liverpool, yeah. Possibly, but then, yeah, and Taken's going to be on the bench.
No, carry on, sorry.
No, go on, Mark.
No, so I was going to say, because you're an agent and you've been in these situations where you've got big profile players that want to engineer that potential move. And they're saying to you, what do we do? How do we get out? And as an agent, you've got to try and give them the best advice possible. Now, Alexander Isak has gone to the Newcastle hierarchy and said, I would like to explore my options. I would like to see what else is out there. Please, will you allow me to have these conversations?
Yeah.
But that is almost a last resort, isn't it? Pushing that button to say, I want to leave.
Yeah.
How difficult is that?
But who is his agent? Does anybody know? Do you know Darmish?
No.
Do you know Mark?
No, I don't know him personally.
Yeah, but you kind of know. So then all of a sudden, the player looks bad. In my eyes, when you're representing players, the player should be the last person that looks bad. You have to protect the player with the way in which you negotiate the contract. And you have to speculate. I mean, he was a good player. He was in Germany, then he went to Spain. And now all of a sudden, If someone had speculated that he was going to blow up now, it'd be a completely different situation. But there's no buyout clause. You know, when he came to the club, I know we're going to come on to Morgan Gibbs-White. When he came to the club...
We have not heard the last of Isak and potentially going to Liverpool in this window,
Definitely not. No, I agree. I think the thing that Newcastle fans will not want to hear is that Liverpool can still afford to do business. And if you look at their net spend in this summer's window, it's around £150 million because they've sold really well. Since Richard Hughes went into Liverpool, they've sold around £190 million worth of player. That's in just 12 months. So with regards to the finances, Liverpool can still make a deal happen. You look at their current squad, they've got two strikers, Darwin Núñez and Hugo Ekitike. Now, there's a lot of noise and speculation about Darwin Núñez potentially leaving Anfield this summer. So Liverpool are not going to want to go into the season with just one striker in Hugo Ekitike. They're going to want at least two strikers. Hugo Ekitike offers versatility. He can play as a number 9 on his own, or key, he could play with someone else, play with a strike partner. And that's where maybe Alexander Isak would come into play. Liverpool are remaining tight-lipped and very quiet on the scenario. They're comfortable with the squad they have. They're happy with the business they've done. But clearly, they're in the market to sign the very best players in world football, of which Alexander Isak is one.
Mark, when we were talking about Hugo Ekitike earlier on in this transfer window, we pinpointed 3 scenarios, if you like, for Newcastle United. The best case scenario is no longer going to happen because it was Hugo Ekitike to play alongside Alexander Isak. Yeah. Ekitike is now a Liverpool player. I guess scenario number 2, which Newcastle United fans will probably have accepted, OK, Ekitike is not coming, but we're keeping our prized asset in Alexander Isak. The nightmare scenario, Hugo Ekitike doesn't join, which he hasn't, and Alexander Isak still leaves. Now, that is still a possibility, as much as Newcastle United fans will not want to hear it. And if you speak to Eddie Howe, he has actually said, we are not going to bury our heads in the sand. We know, we're realistic. We know what's going on at a football club because this is what happens in football. Alexander Isak is in that position where his head has been turned, even though he's got 3 years left on his contract. So whether Newcastle United like it or not, they are going to have to think about life after Alexander Isak if, and it's a big if, he was to go.